Welcome to A Penny for Your Thoughts, and you're listening to Episode 3, The Baffling Case of Theresa Bier. I'm your host, Penny Rose, and today we're exploring a story of a girl who vanished from the Sierra Nevada mountains under the most peculiar circumstances. On June 1st, 1987, 16-year-old Theresa Ann Bier disappeared in the Sierra Nevada mountains near Bass Lake, California. She was last seen with 43-year-old Russell Skip Welsh with a dubious reputation. The two had ventured into the wilderness for a camping trip near Shut-Eye Peak, about 25 miles northeast of Bass Lake. According to Skip, they became separated during their trip and Theresa was never seen again. When Skip returned without her, he had a story that was as baffling as it was unbelievable. Before we dive into Skip's claim that something extraordinary happened during their trip, let's take a closer look at Theresa's life before her disappearance. At the time of her disappearance, Theresa was described as a slow learner and immature by school staff. She was 5 foot 5 inches tall and weighed 110 pounds. She had protruding upper front teeth and bore a surgical scar on her lower right leg. Theresa Bier's childhood was marked by severe abuse and instability. Her parents, Shirley and David Bier, failed to provide a safe and loving home in Fresno, California. Shirley was particularly abusive, and when Theresa was about 3 years old, she was hospitalized with severe injuries. Shirley had twisted Theresa's leg around the crib slats until it broke, resulting in surgery. Shirley had also beaten her on several other occasions, breaking several ribs. This led to social services stepping in and taking Theresa and her sisters away, which coincided with her parents' separation. Theresa was placed in a foster care with Sylvia Pierce, a friend from church who took Theresa and her sister Vicky. A few years later, Theresa's father, David, sought custody after divorcing Shirley and remarrying Margie Richmond. Margie had previously been married to Shirley's half-brother, John Richmond, and she had 2 daughters who lived with her and David. David was granted custody of Theresa, and they moved to Southern California to work as janitors. However, the abuse didn't stop there. Margie was also reportedly abusive towards her daughters and Theresa. The allegations included locking the refrigerator door and eating lunch right in front of the children without even feeding them. Theresa eventually returned to Fresno to live with her great-grandmother. But sadly, this arrangement was short-lived. She then went to live with her uncle, John Richmond, better known as Blind Johnny, and the ex-husband of Theresa's abusive stepmother. John, a 42-year-old man, claimed to have lost his eyesight while playing Russian roulette and had several children of his own. These children included the 2 daughters who lived with Theresa's dad and stepmother. He also had custody of his 2 young sons, whom he had conceived with an unnamed prostitute. John was no father of the year, as you can imagine. He often made Theresa miss school to babysit his sons, and it was alleged that he and his friends also sexually abused her. To complicate matters further, Blind Johnny had a 17-year-old live-in girlfriend named Tamara Newman. Russell Welsh, also known as Skip, was an acquaintance of Theresa's uncle, Blind Johnny. Although Skip claimed to be a house painter, he mainly lived off disability checks. He was also a known meth addict, and his wife, Shannon, had tragically died of a drug overdose previously. On the morning of June 1st, 1987, Skip arrived at Blind Johnny's house, and he noticed that Theresa was getting ready for school, so he offered her a ride. This was a deception, as Theresa had already planned to spend the day in the mountains with Skip. Later that morning, Blind Johnny received a call from Central High School, inquiring about Theresa's absence. Afraid of retribution from the school, Blind Johnny told the school that Theresa was homesick. Concerned, he spent the day searching for her, speaking to various acquaintances. Despite none of them knowing her whereabouts, many warned him that Skip was not a trustworthy man. He also learned that Theresa had told her friends, Peggy and Janice, that she was going to the mountains with a man she had recently met, and that she would miss school for the trip. This is where the story gets interesting. Before heading up to the mountains, Skip and Theresa had stopped by his daughter Chandra Welsh's house. Skip was having trouble with his 1976 Chevy Monte Carlo, and once the car got sorted, they continued their journey to the Sierra Nevada mountain range near the Shut-Eye Peak area. During the investigation, the Fresno police interviewed Skip's friends and family, including 17-year-old Michelle Ryan, a name given to the police by Skip's daughter. Michelle had been lured to the mountain by Skip the previous summer, despite Chandra's warnings. Sandra knew that her father had a habit of luring girls up to the mountain to have sex. Michelle stated that her trip was traumatic. She believed that she had been drugged sometime during the trip, but made it home safely thanks to the two male friends that she insisted come along. The investigation took a darker turn as Fresno police continued to dig deeper. They spoke to Skip's daughter and son, uncovering unsettling details. Chandra revealed that her father and Theresa had visited her on the day of Theresa's disappearance. On that same day, Terry, Skip's son, had also been visited by Skip and a young girl, presumably Theresa. But as the hours ticked by, Skip and Theresa remained unaccounted for. On June 5, 1987, a police officer made a crucial discovery. Skip's battered brown 1976 Chevy Monte Carlo was spotted by a trailer park near North Fork, a town nestled in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. It would later be explained that Skip had descended the mountains to visit a friend, Dorothy Davis. In a state of distress, Skip confided in Davis, claiming that a young girl had been abducted by a satanic group and was being held in the Sierra. Davis, seeing Skip's erratic behavior and knowing his history with drugs, dismissed this as the delusions of a man high on meth. The mystery deepened when a few days after Theresa was reported missing, Blind Johnny received a threatening phone call from a young female. The message was chilling. She told Johnny that Skip was armed and dangerous and forced her to tell him the following statement: "If you continue to make trouble for him, you will have more trouble from him. Even your kids can get hurt." Tell the police that Skip had taken Theresa to school, dropped her off, and some unknown blonde girl had picked Theresa up. 5 days later, the authorities finally tracked Skip down at his mother's house in the Sunnyside neighborhood of Fresno. He was promptly arrested for a previous drunk driving violation. And this is where the story takes a surprising twist. Skip claimed Theresa had been abducted by Bigfoot. Yes, you heard that right, Bigfoot. During questioning, Skip spoke earnestly about Bigfoot, claiming that a large number of these creatures lived in underground caves in the mountains. He insisted that he had communicated with them on several occasions. When asked about Theresa, Skip's story shifted multiple times, but he always insisted on calling her Sam, the nickname he had given her. Initially, he claimed to have dropped her off at school, but soon admitted that Sam had accompanied him into the mountains to seek out Bigfoot. His tale grew even more convoluted. Skip then said that Sam had run off into the woods with another young woman. Later, he asserted she had left with other campers. In yet another twist, he claimed that Sam had become overexcited after they had seen Bigfoot a couple times that day, leading her to run off in search of the creatures again. Skip claimed that Theresa would never return because she'd be happier living with the Bigfoot community in the mountains than at home. At some time during police interviews, Skip offered up the statement that if Theresa were found, there would be no signs of sexual abuse. He claimed that although Theresa would be willing to have sexual relationship with him, he would never have done that with a young girl, as it was not in his nature. Naturally, this left the Fresno Police Department deeply worried about whether they would ever find Theresa alive. Finally, Skip agreed to show authorities to the campsite where he and Theresa had allegedly stayed. He led them to a small grove of trees at the meadow's edge along Browns Creek. In the inner area of this grove, there was a smoldering fire among the damp pine needles. The burnt area was approximately 3.5 feet wide by 8 feet long. Blankets were arranged in a specific formation, and there were various items scattered around: a camera, a purse, an off-white bra, a t-shirt, pictures of the countryside, and a photo of Welsh playing the guitar while sitting by the blanket in the grove area. There were also pictures of Theresa. The campsite appeared to be staged by Skip. From the topography in the photos, local deputies guessed that the real camp was 20 miles away, possibly in Ghost Canyon. Despite the deception, Both the meadow and the canyon were thoroughly searched. A helicopter searching for clues spotted something in the hillside above the Browns Creek camp. It turned out to be a blue shirt belonging to Skip with meth in the front pocket. Bloodhounds were then brought in, and they actually detected Teresa's scent at one point, but no other clues were ever found. Skip was charged with child endangerment and child stealing. He was arraigned and released on his own recognizance by Judge Gallagher. However, this judge did not realize that a previous judge, Judge Austin, had increased Skip's bail to $30,000 after reviewing the case. 2 days later, Skip was rearrested. 3 days before Skip's trial, authorities dropped the child stealing charge. They had offered a recommendation of 1 year sentence if Skip signed a waiver allowing them to pursue murder charges if Teresa's body were ever found, but Skip refused. The prosecution then decided to drop the case entirely to avoid a future double jeopardy if they wanted to charge him with murder later. To this day, Theresa Bier has never been found, and no future charges were ever filed on her behalf. Skip died in 1998 at the age of 54 due to severe coronary artery disease. Blind Johnny died of cancer in 2008. And despite Chandra's admission that her father was a predator at the time of Teresa's disappearance, she came to his defense after his arrest. She claimed that her father's only crime was exercising poor judgment by taking a young girl to the Sierra. The majority of people are convinced that Skip is guilty of killing Teresa and disposing of her body. Alternatively, there is another theory that Teresa simply ran away with this mysterious blonde girl to escape the horrors at home. However, the theory proposed by Skip's family was they believed the notorious speed freak killers abducted and killed her. Who are the notorious speed freak killers? We'll dive into their chilling story in an upcoming episode, so make sure to subscribe. You won't want to miss it. Thank you for joining us on this episode. If you have any information about the disappearance of Theresa Ann Bier, please contact the Fresno Police Department in Fresno, California. Until next time, I'm Penny Rose, and this is A Penny for Your Thoughts.